was made official yesterday that Gary Pert, an end date put on his stint as Chief Executive of the Melbourne Football Club. It will come at the end of the year. And then there'll be an interim appointment. That is the club's Chief Operating Officer, David Chippendale, will take over until a replacement is found. So another big pillar of the Melbourne Football Club falls after the president, Kate Roffey, departed. So I'm not sure what your read is on this, but as we said, I think the culmination of a series of missteps and mismanagement ever since the premiership, even, in fact, probably preceding the premiership, if you include the former president, Glenn Bartlett, that is still going, that courtroom battle, and it was Bartlett who exited while trying to get to the bottom of the culture concerns that, the club arguably still has. Clayton Oliver's massive contract, that was given with all the complexities and issues he faces. Then shopping him to rival clubs when the football department wanted to keep him. At least one player, it is absolutely known, was brought in when the senior players told the club he wasn't for us culturally. There's Joel Smith's drug ban as well that's now official. The Christian Petrarca story is well known, but the lack of empathy and the understanding, and then his potential trade, that's the enormous flashpoint here, I think it's fair to say. So self-sabotage for years. What could have been, it could have been a dynasty, given they're as well set as any club that's won a premiership. They've crumbled instead. The club reviews are due today. And then how much further does this go in the next 6 to 12 months remains the open question.
Yeah, I mean, it's the right call for the footy club to move on in a different direction. How aggressive will they be from here? But, I mean, how it sets them up, certainly for the immediate future, it doesn't paint them in a positive light, because teams that are successful, teams that win, have stability. And Melbourne have anything but stability right now in terms of their best players and their headspace. And even Christian Petrarca spoke yesterday. It was more what he didn't say than what he did say, and still clearly reading between the lines, there's some issues there with his headspace around the footy club. Clayton Oliver, of course, but interim CEO, interim president, isn't it? Like, I don't think anyone's confirmed that Brad Green is going to be the president for a long period of time.
It sounds as though Stephen Smith is still the long-term likely successor, but there's a delay in him getting onto the board, and then, of course, eventually maybe becoming president. But I think Brad Green has been refreshing coming in. I think he hasn't had one single misstep. And I know you said he's probably a bit lively on social media for a president's stature, but I think he's been good. I think he's been full of conviction. He's made a lot of sense. And his comments in a more public, in a more official media avenue have been fine. So how do we, like, with Gary Pert, he joins in 2018. He wipes out the club's debt. The long-standing issue has been a permanent, established, settled training facility. They're finally on the final runway to get that over the line and green lit. They win the premiership in 2021. So he has done a lot of good at the end of the day, I would contend. Now, will anyone remember that or recall that or praise him for that in the wake of everything else? Probably not. But I reckon he's been around long enough to know that's how it's going to play out, and also around long enough to know that the only avenue available for him was to depart.
Yeah, no, what you said is accurate, but the complete capitulation with this football club and the denial that they've been in for so long, and everyone has spoken. That's what we'll all remember. Like, and the ability not to capitalise and maximise what could have been a great era of the football club, to be able to come back to Melbourne and win a premiership in front of your home fans. That they had a group good enough to do that. I think that the pressure that now rises on Simon Goodwin, and all eyes will be on him this year. Firstly, for the way that he handles himself publicly, and whether he is open to any admissions that, maybe things haven't been great at this footy club, which he just hasn't been. He just publicly has not been. But further to that, what sort of football program is he going to put in place? Can he come up with a game plan that actually works and actually is reflective of the way that the game is played now, not the way that the game was played 20 years ago, where he's so defensive, so risk-averse, so petrified of being scored against, which means that the way they play is just not going to cause any headaches offensively to any of the other teams. And just with the stability factor, there's no, if you're doing your top 8 now, there's no way you've got Melbourne in the top 8, because the successful teams in an era that is so competitive have all the pillars in place off the field to support the players on the field, and Melbourne have anything but that right now, and to the point where players from other clubs are refusing to go and play at Melbourne because of the way that they are perceived. So no club has more work to do. No coach will have more eyeballs on them than Simon Goodwin next year, and I guess the start to the season will be fascinating for them. This could go one of two ways. This could be the catalyst for significant change at the footy club, and everyone is on the same page and working together, or this will continue to be a circus. If I was backing it, I'd probably go the latter. I think it's still going to be a circus for some time at Melbourne, but I'm happy to be proven wrong. D's fans, let us know your thoughts. 1300 736 736. I think most Demons fans were celebrating this news yesterday.
Gary Pert did speak to Mark Robinson in the Herald Sun yesterday as well, and he said, I stand by that comment, best culture in 40 years. He said he was taken out of context. I was saying we're dealing with player behaviour issues of a couple of players, he said at that stage.
How could
and
he say that he's been taken out of context? Like, you go back and listen to that full interview, which you did. Like, he
said, I didn't want the entire club being tarnished by that. When I made the comment, we'd won more games of footy in the past 3 years than any other team and had recently won a premiership, and that we were doing a lot of great things. I was saying the player behaviour issues had to be dealt with in that regard and not discredit the Max Gorns, Jack Vineys and Kate Hawes. I didn't want the whole football club being tarnished by a couple of people. But, I mean, the comment was the comment.
And they mentioned culture. He mentioned culture. Like, if you go back, I'm not sure the number, Damien Barrett's actually gone through and counted the times that the word culture was mentioned. So how can you say taken out of context? We all heard it. We listened to it in full. You were there. There was no out of context here. You said it, and it was laughable at the time, and everyone laughed at it, and everyone said you've got your head in the sand. And ultimately, I think this was the start of his downfall, and everything has gone significantly worse since then. But anyway, a good move, and perhaps the catalyst for significant change at a footy club that clearly needs it.
You mentioned Christian Petrarca. So the Melbourne Star was back from a European break. There was a holiday there, but there was also the high-performance training session with Red Bull in Austria, I think. And Christian Petrarca spoke. He was out at a function at Flemington Racecourse yesterday. Some robust conversations, maybe around how he thinks things have to change and what it means to move forward. What will be really interesting is what happens in 12 months' time, like at the end of next season. And there's a lot of water to go under the bridge there, but geez, does he stay settled in for Melbourne for the long term? And you'd be brave to say that at the moment. Would he request a trade at the end of next season? I mean, that's an open question and will be, depending on how the Demons go. Clayton Oliver, perhaps much the same. It might be a very different looking Melbourne at the end of next season.
There might be another coach. I know that's dramatic, but how that would influence his decision making and Clayton Oliver as well. So, yeah, last year we said that Melbourne will be the most fascinating club to watch, and unfortunately for them, it has led to this. I think they're probably in that category again.
Christian Petrarca also spoke about just the camp, like how he's going physically, how he's recovering from that horrific spleen injury, and this was his answer to that. It looks the real McCoy.
So I love that part of it. I think he should have been here for the best and fairest. I think that was really important for him to do that and work out his off-season training schedules overseas at another time that didn't clash with the best and fairest that he needed to be at. But in terms of players taking their careers into their own hands and exploring all avenues to be better, he's done it as well as anyone. And some of the techniques that he's using, you just get a little snippet on social media, of course, but you wouldn't put it past him having a big year and bouncing back strongly. He's still a top 5 player in the game.
He's so motivated at the moment, you can tell. This was his excitement about being back in town. But we find in these things what we want to find half the time, like this text. So Petrarca makes sure he's around for racing promo, but not the club BNF. Well, the reason that he left and missed the club BNF was that window of time was the window of time. There was no negotiating. If he was to take part in that high-performance camp, that was when the Red Bull specialists, if you like, who travel the world doing these things, were doing it. And
it does feel like he only talks when he's plugging something, though, doesn't it? Like a lot of the time, maybe that's just my read on it, but I think that text points to a fact that he's always, when he speaks to the media at these types of things, it's at an event that he's an ambassador for or that he's been paid to be at.
Not the only player to do that.
No, I'm not critical of that, but I think at some point in time, Melbourne are going to have to speak to their fans, I don't know, with a bit of authenticity, like a bit of honesty, because every time they speak, I said this the other day, every time they speak, it's like, I just don't believe what you're saying.
No, I know, and it's like Mr. Wu in Baronia has just cut right to the heart of that very point. I think we all hate being treated like fools. Best culture in 40 years when your ex-president is suing you, a player is trafficking drugs, and your most senior players want to be traded is a laughable situation. And it is.
Well, and the Joel Smith one, like I just got like zero sympathy for him. Like for an elite player, when we know how long these drugs stay in your system, it's not long, to be doing that like days before a game. I've just got like zero sympathy for him at all. Now, the lines that there's some nervous teammates as well. I'm not sure where that leads. I know the media have more information on that than they have been willing to put out publicly, and you're nodding your head there, Sam. So you probably agree. And I don't know why the media have chosen not to release the full information around the text messages that Joel Smith sent and who they were sent to. But this isn't just a Joel Smith issue. That's clear. And how Gary Pert, knowing all of that, sat there and said that, I think personally that's led to his downfall, or was the start of it.
Liam, 2025, the year you can't trust what Christian Petrarca says. That's Liam just cutting right to... What is it, the year of the dragon?
I mean, his actions on the field are going to tell us a fair bit, though. Like, I mean, you can...
Are they?
Yeah, I think so.
He's a professional. He will try his guts out each
he
and every
will,
week
he will.
regardless.
But how you interact with your teammates, those that go and watch
He'll
Melbourne
be fine in that.
play live, how he's on the interchange bench, his discussions with coaches at quarter time, 3/4 time breaks, you get a pretty good insight into the way he's feeling about his teammates and the group with the way that he carries himself. Now, he's always carried himself exceptionally well, and you could never, ever fault his effort and his want to win on game day. So I suspect that will be there. But I think you'll get some signs throughout the year, not just with him, but with his teammates as well, of how they carry themselves and how they interact with each other. And are they in it for each other? And are they playing like their life depends on it, like Melbourne have done when they've been at their absolute best?
Fox Footy did a magnificent list yesterday, the 2025 early pass marks. The 18 clubs, Volcano, and the only way they get their season ticked off is to meet a certain requirement. When you read through it, what was the first thing that grabbed you?
Well, this list needs to be redone. A great idea, love it, good content, and all
Did
of
its
that.
job.
All of that definitely did its job. Got me sucked into it.
Upset a
2025
few.
early pass marks, upset a few. Perfect piece of content. But I just thought what we would do this morning is redo the list to make it more accurate.
You got all 18 clubs there.
All 18, and I've redone what actually is a pass mark, not what the gurus at Fox Footy have said is a pass mark.
Just quickly,
far too generous they've been.
did they get Collingwood and Brisbane confused? Like, surely if you win a flag, you're gunning for back-to-back. They've got Brisbane losing prelim as a pass, and how is Collingwood making a grand final the only way they get a pass?
I'm about to tell you.
They miss finals altogether?
The accurate version of the 2025 pass mark. So let's do
Fire
it.
when ready.
Adelaide, they had it as make the finals. That's wrong. For Adelaide, it is they must win a final.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
Win a final
100% they must win a final. What's the point of this?
to get a pass.
This group making the final. This group should have been winning a final last year. That was, so we don't just say, oh, Adelaide finished bottom 4, so let's lower the expectation. The expectation last year was to make the finals. So don't just get off lightly because you absolutely butchered your season and with the group that you got finished bottom 4. So last year was the year to make the finals in year 5 of Matthew Nix's rebuild. Now it's year 6. It is to win a final.
Right, well, I look at that list and I'm not sure.
Neil Bullen, Pete Ling, you pay 6 years for coming, you pay ridiculous money for all that. You've signed Fogarty for a 7-year contract. You are all in. You keep Taylor Walker, you keep Brodie Smith, you keep all the veterans. Yep. This group has invested significantly in their list. Rank and Dawson, given up first-round draft picks. This is a group that must win a fight. It's not a big ask.
All right, they're making a semi at least. Okay,
I have to. Brisbane. Yeah, I think go back to the grand final.
Got to be a grand final.
Yeah, I think
doesn't it?
with the.
I mean, Danaher leaves. But...
Danaher leaves, but they're going to get some players back from injury. They're going to have a pretty handy player come in with the first pick in the draft, if that's the way it works, who's going to play significant minutes in the midfield straight away and make an impact. So I think, I think they will. I think they'll be back there. For Carlton, I think they've got it as make a prelim, but that happened a couple of years ago. I think they need to make a grand final, the Blues, for Michael Voss. I think this group has been ready to go for some time now. The salary cap is absolutely bursting at the seams. Now, that doesn't happen if you haven't put together a list that's ready to win now. And I think making a prelim, whilst that's a pretty successful year to get to the bottom five, I think it's making a grand final. I think the Blues are ready to go now. They've changed their fitness stuff.
Bar.
It's a high bar for a lot of. It is. It's a high bar for a lot of these teams. But are Carlton fans going to be happy if they bombed out in the prelim?
Well, no, definitely not, because there's only one way you're really happy, but it's just a high bar. I mean, only two teams are going to make the grand final, of course, and we're talking pass marks here, so we're not giving them a pass
mark
unless they make the grand final. It's harsh. All right, what about Collingwood?
I think they've got it right.
Make a grand final.
I think they've got it right. Yeah, I think with what we've seen and the aggression that they have shown with putting this list together, there's no excuses here. This team with all their 30-year-olds, with the lack of draft picks, with the investment that they've made, and they would even say this. So I think, geez, I'd love to see a Carlton-Collingwood grand final. So I think it's make a grand final.
All right. Bombers, they've got here as making
I'm happy with
the
that.
finals.
I'm happy with that. I don't think that will happen. I think they've conditioned themselves to set themselves up for more disappointment and more failure with the way that they're talking. But I think everyone would say that if they make the finals, that's a pass mark.
Now, if you're consistent here, you'll say that the Dockers is way off. The Fox Footy pass mark is win a final.
Yes.
Now, they did this a couple of years ago.
They did. Yeah. No. So I would think for the Dockers, it is prelim final weekend.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I think I think they're good enough to do that. So yeah, they did win that final against the Western Bulldogs 2 seasons ago. So the path should have been to making it further this year and then continuing on that path. So I don't give them a get out this year because they lost their last 4 games and didn't make the final. So
there's going to be a
lot of
disappointing teams.
There's a lot of disappointing teams. There is, but win a final for Fremantle. You reckon is that going to save the coach? I don't know. I know you're going to get to the news. So
I want to ask you about the Cats quickly.
No, I'm happy with make a prelim. I mean, if the sustained success for Geelong, they've got it as make a prelim. So that one I agree with. I also agree with Gold Coast, which is to finally make the finals. I think they're capable of winning a final, but I think as a pass mark, that is fair. And the Giants to make a prelim, I think that's fair as well. They had Hawthorn as winning a final.
This is so far off.
That happened last year. That happened, and they should have come to Adelaide and knocked off Port Adelaide and gone through to a prelim. They're not winning a final is not a pass mark when you've gone and got Barras and Battle and you've already won a final. So this is off.
So is it prelim or are you going further?
Prelim.
Yep.
I think they can win it, but I think as a pass mark for the way that this group is tracking. But the next one is the one. The next one is the one that I'm most offended with. So
this is
the work experience kid was tasked with doing Melbourne for the pass marks at Fox.
What's
Footy.
the pass mark for the?
They have said avoid the bottom 6 for Melbourne. Avoid the bottom 6 like they're talking about Melbourne like they're rebuilding or something.
So ask Simon Goodwin if he thinks he'll be comfortable if they finish 12th. Because that's what they're saying there. Well, if you finish 12th,
tanking, are they?
We'll tick this one off and move on into next year. No problems here. We're going beautiful.
Goody's looking for a job if that pass mark is avoiding the bottom 6. So it's prelim final or bust for Melbourne, surely, with where this is at. That's the proper pass mark. I think they've been pretty kind on North Melbourne as well. I know they won 3 this year, but that doesn't mean that you get.
So they've got them winning 6 games as a pass mark.
Win 6 games as a pass mark. It's got to be
lower
8.
end of the
It's got to be 8.
It's at the lower end of a pass mark.
So Hawthorn won 8 the previous year. So 2023 they won 8. So they've completely fast tracked the rebuild and won 8 then. So. North Melbourne are easily capable of winning 8 games this year. I think that's a realistic pass mark.
There should have been a special category for Port Adelaide. And there's not one pass mark here that says have to win the premiership. But I would have put Port Adelaide premiership in.
Would you?
Yeah. Because I think that's a
pass mark.
I think that's the only thing that's going to guarantee Ken Inkley's job going forward. So that's why I say premiership. They've got make a grand final. I'm being a bit mischievous, but that's right at the pointy end.
They've got make a grand final as a pass mark, which I agree with. I don't think they're good enough to make a grand final, but I think we would all agree that is the pass mark. Richmond, they have it as winning 4 games for the year. I'm okay with that. I think that would be a pass mark for them. The Saints, they've gone light. Like the Saints made finals a season ago. They've got it as just making the finals again. I think that should be winning a final for St Kilda. Well, they hosted.
You said Port Adelaide aren't good enough to win a premiership. Well, I'm not sure St Kilda are good enough to make the
Yeah, well, that doesn't mean that
By any
you
stretch.
go easy on them for a pass mark.
Well,
St Kilda
you just did that.
St Kilda hosted an elimination final a season ago. Why would they not be able to get back to that and win?
Yep, and
a
finish
final?
sixth that year. Sydney is winning the premiership. That is the one that's there as the grand final.
Yeah,
You're right
yeah.
there. What's
I'm
wrong?
just trying to put the lights on. The sensors,
What's wrong? The sensors gone
there's
off again.
motion sensors in here. That if you
You're
don't,
waving your
if you
hand
don't
around like a
move enough,
clown.
the lights go off, and you got to wave.
You're
To get them, there you go. To get them,
now I can
to get
see
them,
that.
to get them back on. Sydney win. I mean, I'm never going to sit here and say winning a premiership is a pass mark. Like, that's ridiculous, isn't it? Like,
Well, Sydney, it is. But Sydney having been belted again
I
in
get
a
it.
grand final, if they get back there and they get hammered again in a grand final, well, that's not a pass
what
mark,
if they
is it?
get back there and put up a really good
We're
fight
talk-
and lose
we're
by
talking
7
about,
points?
Well,
Is that a
again,
pass
what will
mark?
the narrative be? The narrative will be, again, Sydney stumble at the hurdle. What's wrong with them? What's John Longmire doing? You know how it's going to play. So, really, we're talking about the cream of the competition here. I think winning a premiership for Sydney's fair.
Is a pass mark. Gee, that's brutal.
Oh, I know.
Brutal.
The criteria is brutal, but I think if you ask Sydney at the moment, the only way they'd be satisfied with their year next year would be to
All
win
right,
it.
what about West Coast? Win 6 games. I'm okay with that.
Yep,
I think
no issue.
that's a good pass mark. And the Western Bulldogs, I'm not the amount. People are so kind to the Western Bulldogs. Like, they've got it as winning a final. Have you not looked at their list? Winning a final for the Western Bulldogs. The capabilities that they have and the talent at their disposal. It's got to be making a prelim as a pass mark for my Dogs.
Well, Colin in Altona Meadows, I've lost count. Is it 14 finalists, 8 prelim finalists, 4 grand finalists and 3
that's not the
premiers?
criteria. That's not the criteria. The criteria is what is a pass mark for your club.
And I'm assuming they're all Carlton supporters. They are with you, Kane. Clock's ticking on the Blues.
Good.
They've got to make the grand final. I totally agree with Kane. They've got to make the granny. Flag is 25. Kane's 100% correct on Carlton. Cripps is 30 next year. All their top players are in their prime. Their time is
Time is now. Kerno,
says Tony.
Mackay, Wiedering, Walsh, Cripps, all of them.